All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order and we will start by introducing ourselves and then I'll look to you, Sandy, to tell us who's joined us on Zoom. So Kathy Sheehan in the city of Albany.
Mike Arthur, DOT, Capital Region Regional Director.
Rick Hendrick, CEO of Port of Albany.
Mike Butler, City Mechanical.
Gary McCarthy, City.
Rory Clemens, Schenectady County.
Linda Bonderman, representing West County Executive Stephen Cochran.
Michael Stanwell, Mayor Seat Esther. No, sir.
Larry Schillinger, representing the Capital District Regional.
Bill Barrett, Chairman of Saratoga County Supervisor. Tom Werner, Saratoga. Andrew Preshek, representing Mayor Carmel and City of Troy.
Stephen Donnelly, Supervisor, Town of Clemens.
Andres Blumberg, representing Peter Crummy, Town of Colony.
And Sandy Misowitz of the Capital Region Transportation Council. We'll start maybe with Fury over there. Back here.
Ray Richard, 115.
John Schneiderwin, Port of Albany.
I'm Megan Daly from the Port of Albany.
Jacob Beeman, Transportation Council.
Good afternoon, Andy Tracy, Transportation Council.
Christine Studo, Port of Albany.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
And online real quick, we have Dan Hart from State DOT. We have Chaim Simon from the Capital Region Transportation Council, Howard Goebel from City of Albany, and Marcus DeGleon from CDRPC.
Great. And I did get a notification from Carm that he's not going to be able to make it. So let's go ahead and move on to the meeting minutes from June 6th. You all should have received them in advance of the meeting. Do we have any changes, questions? Can I have
I move the approval minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, meeting minutes are approved. We don't have anyone registered to speak, but just to make sure.
Nope.
Okay. Great. So now we are going to move to a presentation by the port. I don't know who's back at the port right now. I feel like we're blessed to have the Port District Commission here, and we're going to hear from Megan Daly and John from the Albany Port District Commission.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And yes, we didn't want to overload the meeting today, but as this is Christine and I's first return to the policy committee, I wanted to make sure that we both attended, and then we were lucky enough to have John Schneiderwin and Megan for this presentation from the planning board. But what we have, there'll be a description on what's going on at the port, but we will indulge you, if you don't mind, with a 5-minute video, which pretty much shows what's going on at our expansion site, with a few shots of what is going on in the existing terminal. Also, a lot happening down there, and we're very proud of everything that is going on.
I'll take it from here. Before we get started, this is our intro slide, but it's a watermark, but you can see a couple things we wanted to point out, and I might need Rich's help on this, but that piece, if you can see, that's a big GE generator piece that's on what's called an SPMT, and there's a vessel behind it, and that man standing to the left is Jeff Dagan. He's no longer with us. That was the biggest piece that has ever moved through the Port of Albany on our record. That did come through rail. It went into one of our warehouses. Additional pieces were put on it so it could go through the rail without it. And then it was lifted by ship's crane onto a vessel to go out to the world. So we felt like this was, you know, really an epitome of some of the things that we're doing at the Port of Albany and how we're working with our region and how we have been building capacity to do this and to do more. And so I'll kick it off from there to the next slide, just to give a little bit of an update, because some things have changed since maybe we've done this before. The port has grown in land size. It's always been in the city of Albany and in the city of Rensselaer, but we have grown by 50% in land size by adding property in the city of Rensselaer as well as in the town of Bethlehem. We do have property in the town of East Greenbush. Part of it is in water and part of it is an old turning basin. But we'll go to the next one, get into a little bit more detail. Some of the maritime capacity that's here is just highlighting all of the new and expanded and rebuilt covered warehouses that we have in our maritime terminal. This is a big portion of what we do at the port, but it's not all of it. We do also have business tenants, but to the capacity about the maritime facility, we have extensive wharf on the Albany side as well as on the Rensselaer side, where we have our terminal operator, Logistec, operates both sides and has heavy capacity, but we are looking to build even heavier capacity. We do work with our city, with our community, with our region, but we can't forget we are a connection to and from the world. If you note on some of these arrows, some of them have an arrow pointing out and some of them have them pointing in, just to give a sense of where we get things to or where we get things from. One thing I always seem to point out is you might think, what's happening with Australia? And I always like to point out that some of the sweetest molasses actually comes from Australia to the port. It's utilized often in the agriculture where it's mixed in with feed and it serves farms in the Northeast, as well as many other commodities that we'll highlight a little bit. So one of the things to be clear, we are a public port. We are a local public authority with members appointed ultimately by the governor of New York State. But the mission is focused not only on commerce on the water, but also on economic development and our contribution to the region. And that is part of the board's charge. And to that end, we did undertake a growth strategy and market assessment that really it spurred even further development and spurred the direction of the development in the past several years, including that growth that I mentioned in the land size. But just some facts on the right, 35% of our land size is dedicated to the maritime operation. That's where most of our investments go, frankly. That's also where we seek to get other public funding support to be able to build on that infrastructure and build on that capacity. But we do also have a substantial expansion and investment underway in both the Albany County side and the Rensselaer County side of the port. We've recently had several state and federal infrastructure supported maritime infrastructure investment that has occurred. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail on that because we think that that's where it might be most interesting to this group. But two last things, we do have roughly 25 business tenants that utilize space and operations in their own right throughout the port district, contributing to the economy as well. We go to the next slide, we'll give a little bit more detail. We've had a couple of recent economic impact assessments of not only port operations, but also on growth opportunity. And so for many years, our job contribution to the region has been 1,400 locally, but also contributing to 4,500 jobs throughout New York State. And the interesting thing about that is there may be a job and an action happening at the port, but it may take, for every one job at the port, it may take 3 to 4 to get something moving throughout the rest of the state or part of the process. But this also shows the potential. That's the last button there I want to highlight is we did an economic impact assessment on the expansion in both the Albany County side and the Rensselaer County side that I pointed out before. That's the potential on what it could affect on the regional economy. That has a lot to do with offshore wind as well as potential related to simply port expansion and attracting manufacturing and the jobs that go with it. So there's a lot of work underway. We do need support and assistance, but there's a lot going on. We'll get into some more of the details.
Can I just interrupt there and just add from a, the standpoint of one of the things that we're now talking about and why it's important for all of the members of this council is that the capacity at the port is attracting manufacturing, and it attracted a significant investment by GE in their facility in Schenectady. And the ability to get these big products to the port is going to be a huge challenge for us to ensure that we are addressing. And so for some of our communities, when we focused on roundabouts, for example, which were important for our local communities and to relieve traffic congestion, I'm thinking about in Saratoga County and in some other places, we have to ensure that those are built so that they are flexible enough to allow these big loads to actually navigate them. And some of these roundabouts were not built with large capacity loads in mind. And so as you think about the jobs and the economic opportunities that you're looking to attract with some of the industrial sites that are the shovel-ready sites that the state is working to promote, the transportation piece of it, given how large some of these pieces are, is going to be really important. And in my previous life, I was the vice president and general counsel of a company in Latham, Intermagnetics. They made, and they still make, MRI magnets. And our goal was to be able to ensure that we were making them with enough lead time that we could utilize the port to transport those, because it was so much more cost effective than having to try to transport them. We were transporting them all over the world to transport them by plane. And so there are, to this point about the local jobs, those are local jobs that are facilitated by what's happening at the port. And so one of the things that has come to our attention and that we're going to be talking a lot more about, and why we really wanted the port to be able to make this presentation, is that as you go back into your communities and talk to your manufacturers, it would be interesting to ask them how important is the port to your supply chain and to the decisions that you're making with respect to expansion, so that you can bring that back to this table and we can make sure that we're communicating that up the chain with respect to the transportation investments that we're going to be making.
That's 100% right, because there are some instances where some of the companies may be able to do it in other states. And they may have to do it in other states. And so we want to be able to make it so it's as possible as possible. So they do choose here. So to that end, we did make some very targeted infrastructure investments in the last several years. There's a lot here, but this really came as a result of, in 2014, the port had a record year with the amount of goods that was moved specifically from GE and out to Northern Africa. There was more ships, more people working that year than ever. And we wanted to be able to, and that was even pushing at the capacities at that point. And we wanted to be able to be sure that we could continue at that capacity or more, because things in this industry were being made larger and heavier, dimensionally big. And so our wharves needed to be able to have that capacity, as well as our buildings, and then also the terminal. So we undertook this comprehensive maritime infrastructure improvement. We got support through US DOT for a portion of it, support from New York State DOT, as well as from Empire State Development for a portion of it as well, and then substantial resources from the Port of Albany, and did a comprehensive upgrade. It's a lot of detail, but I'll try to go through it quick with images, and I think it may be interesting to this group. If we go to the next one, this is what's been known as the Big Lift warehouse, and you may think, well, who cares? It's just a warehouse, but it's 45,000 square feet, clear span, and it's got heavy floor capacity so that it could have 9 to 12 of these big pieces sitting in there at a time safely, and the settlement wouldn't cause a problem from these massive pieces sitting there. So they actually did particular drilling to be able to accommodate that. And the rail runs right through that building. So that door on the left opens and the rail can run right through it, that heavy rail, which we've actually recently updated to be even a heavier gauge, and straightened it out just a bit so that the local railroad was comfortable with the safety for this type of activity. This ties into not only the rail, but also the shipping at the maritime operation, which we'll go to next. I love these pictures because I feel like you can see the nitty gritty of that's a wharf on the right that was being reconstructed to be able to build to a higher capacity. Several years before this, we had done this level of reconstruction at the Rensselaer Wharf, which enabled us to move substantial pieces through there. And then we were needing to do it at the South Albany Wharf, but also added what's called a roll-on, roll-off, a RoRo infrastructure system, and we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Oops.
That's the RoRo, and Rich and I were talking about this before, and it can be a little deceiving. The piece on the right, it's a ramp, but it's a heavy capacity ramp that enables a barge to come up next to it, and then see the piece on the left could be rolled. That's, correct me, Rich, if I'm wrong, that's the second heaviest piece that's been moved, but that came through heavy rail, went on the SPMT, and then was rolled onto a barge, and that was floated domestically to a place in a southern part of the United States. That was an intricate activity that happened because it required pre-planning from a couple of logistics teams and safety, as you would imagine, to be sure that that could be accommodated. But that was pretty exciting for us to utilize that dock and that wharf. We've also added a brand new 60,000 square foot warehouse. That's important for cargo that comes through, including paper pulp, steel, other commodities that need to be controlled and indoors. If we go to the next one, we also rehabbed one of the warehouses.
Sorry about
No,
that.
that's okay. I'm thankful you're doing it, not me, frankly. But that's the one
Sticky today.
that the one we just passed. We had actually, if we go back one
Oh,
more, if
sure.
you don't mind, we had intended, missed it somewhere. We had intended to maybe one more ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That I just wanted to highlight that one was the port's oldest on-dock warehouse. That's almost 60,000 square feet. You can see that's not ClearSpan. You can see that that affects what you can operate in there. We had intended to actually take that down when we put up the other one, but because of the amount of cargo we were getting, because of alternative cargo that needed to be handled, it was actually determined that upgrading this with floor capacity, lighting, and other improvements, including adding rail siding to the west of it, made it critical for our operation. So that was a big deal for us. And then the last thing we wanted to point out that I thank you for
That's okay. I
maneuvering
think I
this.
got a little.
It was exciting for us to not only reconstruct all of the terminal, but as well as the roads. And you may think, what am I looking at roads here? But they're smooth and level, and the capacity is good. And this enabled not only safe movement of cargo and vehicles, but this also was an olive branch between us and the community where there'd been concerns related to the truck traffic that was out on South Pearl Street. And I think this body played a big role in taking a look at that as well. Through improvements to this roadway, it could encourage truck and other industrial traffic to be routed through this path versus on South Pearl and by some of the local homes, particularly the Ezra Prentice homes. So this is about 6 months old and a big upgrade for both internal and external movement. We just wanted to highlight, it's not often that you may see at a port that we undertake environmental initiatives, but this was very important to us. This was particularly important to our CEO, that not only in the conversations with the community, but also looking at, you know, what is happening around us with climate change and other factors. We were the first New York State port to voluntarily participate in what's called Green Marine, which is a North American group that is based on maritime operations and taking a look at how could we reduce carbon footprint. These were the areas that we agreed to focus on. By us participating, it also encouraged our terminal operator as well as other tenants to also participate. You need to undertake an audit every 3 years, every 2, to be sure that you're doing what you said you do and that you're leveling up. And we have been doing this now for 8 years. The next slide will highlight some of the improvements that we've taken as well as some of the tenants have as well. It's also led us in the last 6 months to apply to US EPA did for the first time ever what was called the Clean Ports Program and released a phenomenal amount of funding for zero emission activity. And so we applied for 2 components. One was for zero emission equipment for port handling operations to replace some of the existing diesel or other powered units. And then we also applied for a planning initiative to really look at how we could increase and improve ways to be either low emission or zero emission. We have not found out yet about that. We just wanted to highlight a couple of, again, as a public port, it's important to us to have our actions, the economic impact, but also our actions be, related to the community. And so we do this through a couple of different ways, through either direct partnerships, direct sponsorships, participating in boards or participating in volunteer activities, which some of our team will on their own time volunteer for some of these organizations as well. That is a picture on the right of that navigating the seas game, which makes folks in schools actually think and feel about maritime operations, and it's just so cool, and that's still ongoing. This one highlights a little bit more about the workforce, because I mean, the goal is not only the jobs that are spurred at the port or by the port, but to actually coordinate with our communities, right? Like right in our adjacent neighborhoods that may have disadvantaged populations or in our overall community. That's also an aspect too with the companies that we work with, making sure that there's a labor force that can serve their needs. But these images, I just wanted to highlight a couple things. The one on the bottom left was such a big population. That was actually the Capital Region BOCES brought a group of students from the city of Albany as well as Schoharie.
Schoharie County.
And that was thrilling. I got to tell you, for us as well as the students, we went to some of the companies that were at the port and the expansion project, and to see the next generation in their engagement was hopeful and also compelling for us. And then the picture on the bottom right was actually a group from the City of Albany Summer Youth Engagement doing a presentation to actually that's Doreen Harris from NYSERDA, who came to participate in that. And that was also really cool. We had a representative from GE come as well. And the next slide is a little bit more about our interaction. For the expansion project, we did do a first ever project labor agreement. We did coordinate with our local community in the South End on factors related to that because there was concern, frankly, about access and interrelationships there. And so we took input from South End Community Group, including adding percentage hiring that would be in the project, as well as other utilization requirements. And then this is the last section. We wanted to talk a little bit more specifically about the expansion areas. The star shows the properties that I've referenced both in the city of Rensselaer on the right-hand side that may be known as the former BASF property that's adjacent to the port's existing wharf in the city of Rensselaer and gives opportunity for additional maritime use there. And then also on the top left is in the town of Bethlehem, where we've been undertaking an offshore wind manufacturing targeted project. And we'll talk a little bit more through a video with that one. I think we have 2 slides. This is the property I mentioned in Rensselaer. The goal is to bring reuse to that. That's in harmony with city planning efforts, including surrounding brownfield opportunity area work. And also will bring jobs and investment, and utilize our existing wharf. And then the next slide gives just a little bit of key facts about what the next video will show, which the port added 85 acres and has been undertaking the development of that related to the first offshore wind tower manufacturing project in the United States. While we are still working on funding for the overall project, we have been moving forward with that in a phased approach because we want to meet the industry and we want to bring that opportunity to this region. We see that as having some of the biggest job and investment and multiplier effect opportunities there. To date, we've invested close to $160 million and we're working on more. That's it for me. We did coordinate with we have many consultants involved with a number of the projects that we do, and we're very grateful for that. This video highlighted the safety and environment. I just realized
You were rolling.
I'm so sorry. This highlighted not only the safety aspect, but also gives a sense of the overall impact and goals associated with the project. And so if you'll indulge us, this will last about 5 minutes, but I hope you're as wowed as we are with this. And then if there's questions afterwards, we can take them.
Ports have moved very big things around the world, and the Port of Albany has certainly played that role in history.
At the port of entry, Port of Albany will receive foreign cargo. Ships will transit throughout the world and come right to our wharves. We also have corporations that will export their goods. We have taken on enormous responsibility with what we're building, a manufacturing site for the offshore wind industry.
We've been developing the first offshore wind tower manufacturing operation in the United States. There'll be very large pieces that will be made along the water, put onto a vessel, floated down the Hudson River for inclusion in offshore wind construction in the ocean. To be able to capture a new market in the United States, but to do it in the capital region of New York was an opportunity we couldn't miss.
The project site for this is primarily on Beacon Island. The port purchased the property in 2018. Beacon Island is 85 acres. Collectively, there's 100 acres of property in development towards this project. LaBelle Associates has worked on multiple projects with Port of Albany, this being the largest. We work directly with the project manager. LaBella really supports me in being able to effectively coordinate all the different activity that's happening.
Everything we do is to just try to provide a great client experience. So we try to be as proactive as possible, coming up with solutions to problems even when they arise.
Our team performs safety, environmental, and quality oversight for all activities. We also hold the special inspection contracts and manage a group of sub-consultants that support inspection and testing. One of the key challenges in this project was the environmental contamination component and the public concern related to it. At Beacon Island, there was historic coal ash contamination from a previous coal burning power plant adjacent to the site. Since acquisition of this property, the Port of Albany has had the goal of creating a more environmentally safe site. Our focus was air quality and water quality, protection of water resources to ensure that both the river and the adjacent wetlands were protected throughout the construction project.
The project involved over 17 local, state, and federal agencies. One of the most challenging projects in my career, given the number of federal, state, and local agencies that had to get approvals.
Beacon Island sits at a very sensitive environmental location, so construction had to be very controlled. We cleared the site, we cut all the high spots, filled the low spots, did the mass earthwork for it.
We've had approximately 16,000 tons of impacted soils removed from the site.
And imported 1 million tons of soil and stone, a 4 feet thick impermeable layer across the entirety of Beacon Island.
the community air monitoring program out on site with the help of DEC and the Department of Health. They set standards for the site, which were quite robust. We had 8 different units out on site. So constant monitoring, wind versus downwind, air particulate matter, constantly monitoring the air out there just to make sure that the community is safe. We had no exceedances off the site. We had no dust or particulate leave the site.
We provide water sampling during and after construction, to ensure that water quality in and around our project site and in the Hudson River was not impacted negatively by this project.
There's 5 monitoring well locations out on site. We have a team come out and pull samples of the water, monitoring the levels.
We documented and shared the extensive data that we have collected to these state agencies and the community, make sure that they were informed and aware of what we were doing to demonstrate that this was a safe project.
The Port of Albany also designed and started building one of the heaviest capacity bridges for its span length, probably in the nation. Its ability to support 150 metric ton tower sections moving across the bridge.
Next phase will with the construction of the manufacturing facility where the tower section built, all the infrastructure, stormwater is in place.
It's expected to add 626,000 square feet of manufacturing space across 5 buildings and utilize a 6,000 pound per square foot wharf, which is really unique in the United States and the maritime industry.
We have left the site in a safer, more environmentally friendly condition than it was when the Port of Albany obtained it. At Labella, we live in the communities that we work in, take pride in that. I live locally. I live 5 minutes from the project site. My kids play sports on fields that are downwind from this site. It's an area adjacent to my community that we are making better, we're making safer, and we're very proud of that. At Labella, we like to use the slogan powered by partnership, and this project was a tremendous example of that.
Labella came on, they represented the Port of Albany, especially situation.
Working with the Port of Albany has been great. Their partnership has been fantastic. I'm really proud to be a part of this project.
It's very important to be able to pick a team that has experience, integrity, that also can back that up with facts. Labella has been excellent as a partner with this.
This project is a once in a lifetime thing to be a part of, and I got to be a part of that, and that's really, really rewarding.
Nice. Thanks.
That concludes. If anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to try and address them.
I got a quick question, though, the answer may be lengthy, so if you want to defer, that's fine, because I don't want to saddle our proceedings, but so I represent the Regional Planning Commission, and so I'm thinking about the expansions, City of Rensselaer and Bethlehem, and my curiosity is what's the degree by which the local governments have to approve through their zoning and planning departments the port's activities when the port acquires those new.
Everything. It's a normal planning process for anything that is outside of the marine terminal, which is the existing facility inside the fence. Anything that employees of the port would be using is done through New York State OGS building services. They approve our building permits. Anything that is just outside that, where our tenants, Ardent Mills has a project in front of the planning board. The city of Albany's planning does the entire process. In the city of Rensselaer, and there's been some projects that have gone to the town of East Greenbush, same way. And then the entire Beacon Island site went through. The town of Bethlehem was the lead agency for seeker, and every other agency that was involved with it.
Great. Thank you. All right. Great presentation. We now are moving on to some tip amendments, and I'm gonna have Sandy walk us through
Yes.
what those are, and we are,
I'm gonna start with the Livingston Avenue Bridge. Do the DOT folks want to share what's happening with the Livingston Avenue Bridge?
Yeah, that was swapping 90 million of state funds to Surface Transportation Block Grant System. Part of the August redistribution to quickly obligate funds.
So, the addition of this 90 funds source swap of the $90 million is why this is on the agenda for today. Just bringing federal money to an otherwise entirely state-funded project.
well, not being one to want to turn away other people's money, I will make a motion to approve that amendment. All in favor? Any opposed?
Next up is also a DOT project, Normanville.
Yes, this was a scope, project scope was increased to incorporate a multi-use path between Talacenta Park and Winter Recreation Area. Inflation since originally being programmed also caused some of the $7 million increase. And it should be noted that this bridge is funded via the statewide capital program in an effort to invest in more bridge replacements.
And so with these increases, there's not a project that's not going to get funded.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Can I have a motion to approve the amendment for Route 146?
Oh,
Second,
Second.
All right.
all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Great. Next is the Riverview Road Bridge, also DOT.
Yes, this was the bridge just north of the Twin Bridges that was struck earlier this summer. And it caused us to accelerate our replacement schedule for this project. And we had to update our cost based on recent price trends, bringing the total cost from approximately 8 million to 11.2 million. Currently, our contractor is working on a system to get this current bridge open to one-way alternating traffic, but we're accelerating the replacement schedule from 2026 to 2025.
Any questions? Great. Do I have a second?
Linda?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Great. Next up is New Carner Road. I don't know if Lisa Raimondo is here to speak about it. So, Jacob, did you want to highlight the
Yeah.
amendment or
I can
maybe
say
the
a few
DOT
words
folks?
about it. So this one is a Albany County project. So it's the addition of a new project for a roundabout at New Carter Road, Washington Ave Extension. This was originally going to be included in an existing New Carter Road corridor project that the county has. And with some of the work that they've been doing with DOT, there was some delays that would have been caused with some of the environmental work. So they're shifting the roundabout to a separate project so that they can move forward on schedule with their existing corridor project. So this is the addition of a new $7.2 million project, partially funded by highway safety improvement funds that come from a set aside that we had. So those were existing funds, and then an additional increase to STBG larger.
Any questions? Can I have a motion to approve? Sorry. Second,
I'll second.
all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. And now we have improvements that are being made
The
for
curve warning
multiple
sign.
sites.
Yes, that's DOT as well.
Let's see, this is curve warning signs. This is a program identified in the roadway departure action plan to upgrade curve warning signs to current MUTCD standards. And this family of projects represents planned investment in the Capital Region Transportation Council area. And the second one is 7 projects totaling $22.3 $4 million that are listed in the tip letter. So we're assisting the local partners by helping get these on the tip as soon as the announcements are made.
So we'll just go back to the curb warning sign amendment, and then we'll circle back to the TAP CMAC awards.
So I'll make a motion on the curb warning signs. Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Okay, and then the next piece is the TAP CMAC and CRP program awards, which Mike started to introduce. We received 7 awards. Okay, 7. Yep. So these are new projects being added to the TIP.
Any questions on any of these awards?
We can take them all as a group.
I have a motion to approve. Second. Great. Further discussions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you. The next item, I'm gonna let Jacob speak to. This is regarding our upcoming 2025-2030. I can't even believe I'm saying those words. Tip solicitation materials. Take it away, Jacob.
So, we provided some tip solicitation materials for you all. Specifically, I'm gonna talk about our tip guidance document that we provided. So this document, we've worked closely with our tip task force to develop it. And our tip task force is essentially a subset of our planning committee, who we kind of bounce ideas off of and help work through our tip update process. So this document really outlines the upcoming tip update process, kind of goes into what is the tip, eligible applicants, eligible projects, things like that. Most importantly, we do have some updates to our project evaluation criteria. So this document details that quite thoroughly. The biggest change from our last tip update that some of you may be familiar with is previously we kind of had one big long list of evaluation criteria that each project would be evaluated against. This update, we've kind of tailored that more specifically to each project type. So we've got 6 different project types and specific evaluation criteria for those projects, with the idea that we're going to be able to kind of ask for less information from the sponsors and make the applications more streamlined while still kind of getting the same outcome in our evaluation process, being able to score projects against each other. So that's the tip guidance document that we're going to be acting on. Andrew, I think we've got a few notes about our job form application as well that can be released.
Yes, we will use the online application system called JotForm. This is the same online system that we used for the prior tip update 3 years ago, and we've been using it for the Bridge New York applications the last 2 years as well. We will have a different application for each of the 6 project categories, and each application will have only the questions needed to score that project category to help streamline the process for the applicants and the scoring on our end. Each applicant will receive a confirmation email with a full PDF copy of their submitted application for their records. One thing that I will note is that JotForm only allows one in-progress application at a time, so please keep that in mind if you want to submit multiple applications. Please fully complete one before beginning the next. And also, each application will require a signed letter from the local chief executive committing to the local match requirement for the federal funding. So keep that in mind as you begin preparing project applications. If some kind of board action is needed, make sure that that'll work with your schedule.
So we'll be hopefully issuing a solicitation in the next month or 2 at the latest. So the motion you'll make today is to approve these materials and authorizing us as staff to issue the solicitation.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay.
So next is an update on where we're at with the long-range transportation plan, the regional transportation plan that we've been referring to now as In Motion. Just a quick reminder of where we're at. We've completed a number of products. They're all available on our website for the plan, inmotionplan.org. I encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to look at the story map, which is a much more interactive tool to review sort of the existing conditions in the region. We also have published our draft goals that we'll be using throughout the planning process. And there's a number of other resources available on that web page. We're about to close our current survey that is open, in which I sought public input on big ideas for transportation. If you had the money, where would you spend the money? And what are your priorities? We were also seeking input from the public on their reaction to the goals. And so that survey is closing. And I know that this was asked at our last planning committee meeting, but I just thought I would share, where did we go to gather survey responses, and how did we provide information to the public? So we did a bunch of event tabling over this last month or two. We went to a couple of farmers markets. We did transit station pop-ups. We actually had a table at the Saratoga County Fair this year. Went to Latin Fest and the Black Arts and Culture Festivals in Albany. Glenville, the town of Glenville had its first responder night. We tabled there. We also did a series of Vision Zero safety public meetings that Carrie led that we had some materials at as well. We had a number of planning study meetings related to our linkage program and other things that we also had materials available. All of our transportation council advisory committees met over this last 2 months, so we've distributed information to all of those folks. And then our social media, our newsletter, and ongoing elected official outreach. I've met with many of you to talk about things happening in your communities. If you haven't heard from me already, you'll be hearing from me in the next few weeks. And so all of that has fed into what we hope is a fairly representative sample. Again, none of these surveys are ever scientific. I just want to make sure that's clear. It's just a sample of, community values, and we try to use that as a guide for our planning work. The big piece that we wanted to share and get your take action on today is our draft vision statement. And this, again, is a long-range plan. We're looking out to the year 2050. So, this vision statement is something that, we're going to be looking to work toward over a long period of time. And I'll just read this, listen to your reaction to it, and hopefully we can release this for public review. The draft vision statement is as follows. By 2050, we will strive to maintain a clean transportation system that provides safe, equitable, resilient, and reliable options for the movement of people and goods. The capital region will thrive with a seamless multimodal network that is community-focused, connecting all people to economic opportunity while supporting sustainable growth and livable communities. Transportation investments will address inequities, improve system performance, adapt to technological advancements, and protect the environment for future generations. So that's our broad brush goal, but I think it encapsulates a lot of the issues we've been hearing from the community and from you folks. And I think it's a good start to go to the public with. And once we get through this action today, where we're going to be really in the heart of building the long-range plan over the next few months. We'll be developing planning scenarios, looking at developing a regional needs assessment and financial plan, developing a list of illustrative projects. So those big ticket ideas, if you will. We're currently completing a collection of video drone footage throughout the region. We've got some great drone video that we'll be able to use for a wide range of activities. I mentioned the financial plan, continuing ongoing public engagement, and then we have a In Motion task force meeting September 18th. But by the next policy board meeting, I suspect there'll be a lot more policy-oriented items for you folks to react to. So stay tuned, as this is where it gets exciting and gets more interesting for all of you. So with that, that sort of summarizes where we're at with the plan, but the draft vision statement is on the table today for action. Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Great, thank you. And then continuing on with the theme of freight, since we had that presentation, and thanks again to the folks from the Port of Albany for that. And I'll turn it over to Chris Bauer to talk about the National Highway, I'm probably saying a rough freight program. Is that the correct
Yeah.
acronym?
This is the request that came from New York State DOT main office, so if folks want to chime in or anything, please feel free to do so. Just two acronyms here that they're using that you may not have heard before: NHFP, National Highway Freight Program, and federal freight funding program in the transportation bill. There's also FAST Act. And CUFC, Critical Urban Freight Corridor, which is other. So, New York State DOT is in the final stage. Actually, they just received approval on their state freight plan. And as part of that, they are proposing 3 new NHF funded projects in our region. And along with that, Critical Urban Freight Corridor designations. So the state becomes eligible for these funds when FHWA approves the state freight plan, which has to be updated every 4 years. It has to include a fiscally constrained investment plan, which includes this NHF, how this NHFP funding will be spent. And NHFP funded projects have to be on a critical urban freight corridor. That's not DOT is limited to 150 miles of critical urban freight corridor mileage statewide. So if you do the math on that, that's not a lot. That's not even enough to cover all the freight corridors in our region, let alone a region of city or Buffalo. That so DOT strategy has been to designate short CUFC segments based on the location of where NHFP funding is to be spent. New coordination for new designation requires coordination with GO start here today. These planning made August 7th. Certification of segments. And I'll just quickly go through the 3 projects that they're proposing. The first is replacement of the New York 146 bridge over 89 with the city of Schenectady and County. And it's $5 million NHF funding to just under $9 million project and a 0.1 mile critical urban freight corridors. Next one.
And I will just add, based on our earlier presentation, as a reminder, it needs to be high enough to fit stuff underneath them, right?
The second location is also Route 146 in the town of Rotterdam over CSX Railroad. And this is $9 million of NHFP funding for an $11.6 million project at 0.2 miles of critical urban freight corridor. Next one. And the third is adding $5 million NHFP funding to the interchange improvement project at Ballard Road, X1600. And actually, this is a great photo. It's captured. You can see exactly why I do. This is a rural area that's had been growing rapidly. Few distribution centers there. Old interchange, single lanes. Get a couple of trucks turning left on or off the ramps. It kind of backs them up. So really great. That's all I have. But the motion that we're asking for today is to certify the critical urban freight corridors. The DOT was left to come back to add these projects to the TIP.
I'll do that in part of the TIP update process.
I know we all have critical urban freight corridors that we would like to see added, but I appreciate all the work and the challenges in getting this down to the 3 that were designated. Any other questions? Can I have a motion to approve? I'll get a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Okay, the Title VI implementation plan is just a quick revision. You may recall that we had our certification review back in March. During those conversations, our federal highway partners, along with the Federal Transit Administration, noted that our Title VI document that we updated a few months prior to that needed some additional tweaks. So this just represents the additional tweaks, which the primary one really is just the reporting procedure in which we're going to be involving Federal Highway Administration on any Title VI related complaint. So I just need a motion to approve the revisions to our Title VI plan.
Make the motion.
Second.
All in
Alright.
favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. Okay. Sandy, did you have any other status report?
Just a couple quick things. Number one, along with the upcoming tip solicitation, we will be issuing a call for planning projects coming in following our October planning committee meeting. So this is to contribute towards our annual work program here, where we fund linkage studies, we may fund technical assistance projects, we may fund something in the Great World. So we'll be ADA projects, ADA transition plans. So be looking for that. We'll be bringing that to the planning committee for release in October. And we'll have probably a December deadline for the submissions for that. In addition to that, I just wanted to thank everyone who participated in our Vision Zero Safety Action Plan public meetings. The virtual workshop video is available if you weren't able to attend and you want more information on the project. It's available now on the Vision Zero website. And I think that's it for now.
Great. All right. Larry, why don't we start with you?
Okay, so when I was here at our previous meeting, I believe I gave a heads up that our housing study at the Capital District Regional Planning Commission was in draft form. Since then, it's been released as a final document. It's available on the website, and to the extent that planning function that's addressing improvements to the quality of life for the inhabitants, it's important also to ascertain and carefully define, what that population is. So the study looks at housing affordability. We look at regional population and age projections through 2050. It includes a regional analysis of school district enrollment, and also there are analyses of out-migration, in-migration, and also the categorization of foreign-born populations throughout the planning region. Switching topics, we're continuing to pound away on the development of our comprehensive climate action plan. That's a funded project, and it's being undertaken in partnership with regional agencies and partners, including the Transportation Council. Additionally, the Capital District Planning Commission, in partnership with the 4 counties that comprise the commission, has developed and getting input on a regional broadband feasibility study, and that's designed to identify and outline locations that are in need of broadband expansion, areas that are currently underserved or actually not served. And that study will ultimately be used to support grant applications for the New York State program, that's the DAD program. Lastly, Capital District Regional Planning Commission is hosting our annual planning and zoning workshop at Hudson Valley Community College. That's on October 18th. And encourage people here with planning departments to encourage your staff to attend that. And very last, I'd like to thank Supervisor Barrett, who is working with the Board of Supervisors, very nicely invited Capital District Regional Planning Commission to address the county board in Saratoga about our activities, services that we provide, and I would encourage any other municipal representatives to reach out, like similar presentation on the various programming that's provided by the.
Great, thanks. Any questions of Larry? I know Carm is not here. I have received calls and questions about the anticipated acquisition of the Greyhound bus station by Capitalized Albany Corporation and the subsequent plans to demolish it. We are working with Carm, and Carm is looking at an alternative location that the transit authority would operate, that would become a new bus station. Greyhound has been made aware of that, and he has spoken to them. So all of that is, nothing is settled, nothing is imminent with respect to the tear down, but with all of the focus on the potential future uses of that site, it is on our radar. So for those of you who have had concerns or have gotten calls, we are moving forward on that. So I can report on that. Let's go to you, Mike. Anything in addition?
Just a couple of personnel shuffles that maybe people that you interact with. Chad Corbett is now the Albany County resident engineer. He was in Schenectady. He's now in Albany County. Tom Cashdollar is the acting resident engineer in Schenectady. And we have a new regional permit engineer, Wyatt Martin. Guy Tedesco was the regional permit engineer. He's now moved over to our local projects group. And one other statewide change is Ken Bibbins is now our assistant commissioner for operations. Pat Barnes was in that role. He just retired. Ken came down from our Watertown office where he was the regional director up there. Just moved in last week. That's it.
Okay. Any questions for Mike? Bill? Great. We don't have anyone here from the airport authority. Rich, we just heard from the port. I don't know if you had anything you needed to add or wanted to add.
Just one thing that wasn't mentioned, but we're a big part of the Champlain Power Express cable that is unloading at the port for the past month. It's moving slow, but it's moving, and that's to bring the DC power from Quebec to New York City. It would take the place of the shuttered nuclear power plant in Point.
Regional local planning activities.
If anyone has anything they'd like to share, this is your opportunity. Good.
All right. Our upcoming meetings are in the agenda. So if there's no additional business, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second? We'll stand adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
There you go. And I'm not stealing your pen.